This young man, he did our Saturday training. Does the second Saturday every month. He hails in San Diego, California. He's a great example of a good father. He was an entrepreneur. He was also very influential in the company he worked for, flying all over the country. Was in the analytical arena and also is a full-time regional director. I'll say it again one more time so y'all catch this. He's a full-time regional director. And he's with us today. Without further ado, can we give a warm welcome to the one and only Mr. Julian Lewis.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing amazing. Before I get started, I just want to give it back to Mr. Thomas. I just understand as a senior vice president, the things that he does on a consistent basis for the organization, he doesn't have to do. He's already had success. He's already helped multiple people to get to high levels of success twice in two different companies. He was able to build it in another company, come over to ACN, rebuild it again, and mentor people to realize their success and their dreams. And as a friend and a mentor, I thank you for everything that you've done for me, my family, and my team all throughout the country and a few other countries, guys. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to get right into it, but I know we have a few new people. So before I do, just to give you a brief background on myself, prior to getting involved with ACN, I was a senior systems engineer. I was working roughly 80 to 90 hours a week at my job, and I was averaging 50 to 60 flights a year, which put me in a position where I really didn't have a lot of time for myself or my family, but good fortune came my way. I was introduced to this business by my first mentor in this industry, who shared with me a system that allowed me to replace my six-figure income and enabled me to come home to my family. And most importantly, the biggest impact to me was being able to become the type of father that I felt my daughter deserved. Okay. And I was 6 months old. She's 16 years old now, in the summer leading into her senior year in high school. And I've been able to be with her the entire time because of ACN allowing me to have flexibility in my personal life. And it's allowed me to do a lot of other things that I didn't think are possible. We're going to talk about that today because what I found is we talked last week about being non-negotiable. So if you're taking notes this week, this is going to be called identity crisis. Okay. If you want to take notes, you can write that down. It's identity crisis. And the reason why we don't continue, or why we can't keep the habits that we keep, or why we can't reach the goals that we want to reach, or if we reach the goals, why we can't stay there, why it always seems like we backslide from goals that we attempt to reach. And the real reason is because when you're changing your habits, you're not changing the person. The person you are does not align with the habits or the goal that you're creating. So the habits of the person you are keeps you in the same place. If you've ever heard, work ethic can keep you there, but your character, work ethic will get you there, but your character can't keep you there. That's one of those things where you have to get to the root and change the philosophy. And the root or the philosophy is the identity of the person. So we got to focus on, if you want to create the success you want in ACN, you want to create the habits you want to create in this business, we got to look at the identity and we got to change that. And so what I want to do is real quick, I want to share with you a video that's going to talk about this. It's a quick 2-minute video. And then afterwards, I'm going to come back up and we're going to break this down. And at the end, you'll know how to do a few simple things that are built upon each other that can that stem from identity change. And your habits will validate that change, and you'll be able to support the successful goals that you want versus backsliding to the areas that you are right now. So let me go ahead and pull that up, you guys.
And even more so, your identity and sense of self, a lot of times, is all rolled up into your habits, which is even a crazier kind of a messing with your brain. In that these little things you do that you might ignore all the time could change who you actually are.
So I had this question while I was researching the book. I think identity plays a crucial role, but my question was like, well, how do we come to believe things about ourselves? Because when you come into the world as a baby, you don't have any preset beliefs or notions. That's not to say that, again, your genes don't matter. They certainly matter in some sense, like your height might be more or less baked into your DNA. But we all realize that if you grew up in a different culture or a different religion or a different community or household, you could adopt completely different beliefs if that was what you were raised in. And so I was like, well, how does that happen, right? How does this internal story that we tell ourselves, our identity, become shaped and formed? And I realized that it's mostly through the repetition of that story. And so what you come to realize is that your habits reinforce a particular identity. And sometimes this can be positive and sometimes it can be negative. The story could be things like, I'm bad at math, or I'm terrible at remembering people's names, or I'm not good at remembering directions places. Yeah. And all of those that's just an internal story that you tell yourself. But each time you have an experience that reinforces that, the story gets solidified. And so I think the method, the takeaway here is that every action you take is kind of like a vote for the type of person you want to become. And if you can master the right actions, if you can master the right habits, then you can start to cast votes for this new identity, this desired person that you want to be. And I think that's one of the reasons why small habits matter so much. They don't necessarily transform your life overnight, right away. Like doing one push-up does not transform your body, but it does cast a vote for being the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. Or meditating for 1 minute might not give you an immediate sense of calm in your life, but it does cast a vote for being a meditator. And this is why one of the things I say in the book, like the real goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to write a book. The goal is to become a writer. Because once you've adopted that identity, you're really not even pursuing behavior change anymore. You're just kind of acting in alignment with the type of person you already see yourself to be. It's kind of like true behavior change is really identity change. Because once you've changed that internal story, it's way easier to show up each day. You're not even really motivating yourself that much to do it. You're just like, this is who I am now.
All right. So he talks about that. And the reason why I wanted to share that with you is because a lot of people don't realize how simple that is. And so they try to do big things. And when you want to make a big change, you make it in small increments. So what happens is that we mistake doing big things for creating big change. But when you do something too big, it doesn't line up with your identity. So it creates an identity crisis, and you'll always fall back to the person that you are. So I want to break this down so that all of you have it. So it's challenging for most people to create new habits. And the reason is because we try to change the wrong thing and we try to change them in the wrong way. Okay. And so if you want to look at how habits are or what they look like, there are basically 3 layers to habits. So if you're taking notes, the first layer is changing the outcomes. Okay. Outcomes is what you get. All right. The second layer is changing your process. What is your process? The process is what you do. And then the third layer is changing your identity. And your identity or your philosophy is what you believe. All right. So here's what most people in the world do. Most people focus on what instead of who. They focus on the outcome base instead of their identity. So I'll give you an example. Someone is trying to quit smoking. Let's say you're trying to quit smoking. Let's say we have 2 people that are trying to quit smoking. And the first person A, is handed a cigarette. And that person says, no, thank you. I'm trying to quit smoking. Now, person B is also handed a cigarette. And person B says, no, thank you. I'm not a smoker. See, that's a small difference, but it's a huge difference. It is a huge difference. The first person still identifies as a smoker who's trying to quit. The second person doesn't identify with being a smoker anymore. That's in the past. One still is, one is in the past. And it's easier for the person that does not identify as being a smoker to not take a cigarette because that habit isn't associated with their identity. I hope that makes sense to all of you. So if you want to be successful in ACN, you have to do these new things to get there. So you may want more money, but if you're someone that consumes instead of creates, you will continue to be poor. You have to go to the identity part level in order to really do this. So you may want better health, but if you're pulled towards comfort, versus training, it won't happen. True behavior change is identity change. It only sticks if it becomes a part of your identity. So for instance, the goal is not to read a book. It's to do what? It's to become a reader. I hope you guys are catching this. The goal is not to run a marathon. It's to become a what? It's to become a runner. The goal is not to get customers and business partners. It's to become a top producer. Your behaviors are a reflection of your identity. Acting like the type of person you already believe. It's not even action, Sam. It's not even just action. It's your behaviors are a reflection of your identity. Everyone's always taking action, Sam. They're taking action based on what they believe. Even though your more noble self wants to do all these things, who you believe yourself to be, if it's not that person, will stop you from getting there. That's why something called imposter syndrome exists. It's working. So your identity is a gift and a curse. When you don't understand it, it could be working against you. So somebody could say, I'm terrible with directions. And so they do things that support that. Someone can say, I'm not a morning person, or I'm not a good presenter. These are all made up narratives or stories in your mind that you believe that are a part of who you are. So you continue to do things that give you evidence to validate that. I want you to understand this is big, because if you can really listen, just really catch this, and maybe even go back and listen to this again, it can change your life. Changing your identity comes in 2 steps. And you got to remember, the biggest reason you don't reach your goals is because they conflict with who you are, AKA your identity. So you change it in 2 steps. So what I really want you to know, even with the word identity, I don't know if you've ever looked it up. I think I have it right here so that you guys can see. Give me 1 sec. So identity, the word identity was originally derived from the Latin words essentias, which means being, and identidem, which means repeatedly. Your identity is literally your repeated beingness. It's going to mess a lot of you up, because you're going to realize that the things that you identify with, you created. You created. I've said this before in trainings that we've had. It's the narrative. You keep playing a narrative of what you believe you are, and your mind, your brain identifies things in your life that hook into your narrative to support your belief, even if it's not true. Even if it's not true. And so you really got to get down to the bottom of this and understand that your identity is governing everything. So when I used to have trouble with becoming a fit person, it was because I was just trying to lose weight. I identified as an unhealthy person who was trying to lose weight. I hope making sense to you guys. So if I'm trying to lose weight as an unhealthy person, I might lose weight and look good for a little while, but what will happen is I will gravitate right back to being unhealthy because I still identify with it. So my habits that support my identity keeps me trapped where I'm at. I need that to really sink in, because when you take a look at ACN, when you tell yourself you're not a presenter, guess what? You're going to validate it with evidence that supports it. Anytime you make a little mistake in a presentation, you're going to say, see, there it is. There's the evidence. I'm not a presenter. Ironically, someone who identifies with being a presenter will make the same little mistake and they'll laugh about it, because they'll say, it's a new person. They don't even know that I made a mistake. It's all about what I'm actually sharing with them, and I'm still going to get them in. Same exact presentation, different identity. The way they show up is different based on that. The first person will get discouraged, and it will force them to stop presenting because they identify as what? Not a presenter. The second person saw evidence as to why, even with a mistake, I signed them up. I need to keep doing what? Presenting, because I'm a presenter. I always thought it was funny when people say I'm a night person, I'm a morning person. You're that person because that's the narrative that you decided to believe. I remember I used to think I was a night person because I was a creative. I used to write. I used to do all kinds of things. And a lot of creatives were night people. So I associated with that. That was my identity. And then I realized that it was nonsense. I believed it. You know why I believed it? Because I believed it. Some of you we'll get that later. I believed it because I believed it. And so I did things that were aligned with being a night owl. And so I used to say it's hard for me to get up in the morning. I used to say all these things. And guess what? The only person on this call that gets up earlier than me because they want to. Now, if you have a job and you have to get up early, it doesn't even count. But because they want to, it's Mr. Thomas. I get up at 4:45. He gets up at 4:30. I get up and go right into the workout. So why? Because I changed my identity. My identity is I'm a fit person. I'm a self-disciplined person. I'm a successful person. Well, have you ever heard the saying, what would Jesus do? That is an amazing question. Because if you can get great at asking yourself, what would a top producer do? Maria, what would a successful woman do? Sharion, what would a top producing woman do? Ishmael, what would a top producing SVP do? You have to start asking yourself these questions and embody that. And it doesn't mean that you need to have 100% thoughts in that direction. It's like votes. You just need enough votes cast for that identity, and you will show up as that. And how do I know it? It's proof in my life. In everything that I've done, I've become successful because I said, I am this, I will be, I'm going in this direction. It's not, I'm an unsuccessful person trying to do this. In fitness is the only area in my early 30s where I couldn't tackle it. And when I look back, it's because I was identifying as being unhealthy, trying to get healthy. So you really got to look at your identity, write these things down, figure out who you want to become, and become that person from the inside out. And here's what's so awesome. Everything that you get in your life is a byproduct of who you become. People have said before, it's not what you're doing, it's who you're being, but that's not necessarily true. It's who you're being that alters what you're doing, that alters what you're getting. It's who you're being that shifts what you do, that shifts what you get. And it's important to understand that because in the world that we live in today, in this world, most people, 99% of the people at least in this country, they focus on the what you get, which is the most superficial level. And then they try to attack it. They try to jump to what you get, and they keep falling. They never can hit their goals because they didn't change who they were. Who they are now would never get that. That's why it doesn't exist in their life. I'm gonna say that again. Who you are right now won't get that. That's why it doesn't exist in your life. You got to become the person who would have that. And until you do, you won't get it. So what does a top producer do? If you really don't know, call up a top producer and ask them, what does your day-to-day look like? No, and listen to me carefully, because this is where some people will get confused. You'll call someone who has a title. That's not what I said. Call someone who, so let's do this for ACN so you're clear, so we're clear. You want to know what a top producer does right now in ACN? Who wants to know what a top producer does right now in ACN? You call someone who's in top production in their open line RD. Don't call someone just because they're an RVP. Don't call someone just because they're an SVP. Because a general who did it 20 years ago can give you a lot of mindset and philosophy, but a general who's not in open line RD production ain't gonna tell you jack about how to do it right now. Game recognizes game, and people who understand this. And I'm telling you this because this hurts a lot of RVPs and SVPs' feelings, because it exposes people. If you want to have the identity of a top producer, I'm saying this out of love, contact someone who is in open line RD production and customers and team trainers consistently, and they will be able to share with you. Ask them, what do you do on a daily basis? When I'm not in production, I don't have an ego. I tell my team, who am I listening to? Those are the people that are in top open line RD. Some of you don't even know what open line RD means. See, there could be a top producing SVP, but they haven't done work in 5 years because their top producing production is based on the actual producers in their team. See, I was an engineer. I reverse engineer everything. I can look at the charts and tell you who's really producing and who's not. That's why a lot of people don't talk to me about stuff like this. So you want to have a conversation. I'm telling you this out of love. Connect with whoever's closest to you who's really producing and ask them what their day is like. If you want to talk to someone who's not producing, ask them what their day was like when they were. Not what are they doing right now? Because sometimes when people are out of production for a long time, they start to experiment because they get out of the mindset of what got them there in the first place. It's not signing up reps or IBOs. It's not getting people qualified that got them there. You know what got them there? Getting people paid and promoted from their own actions. And if you don't see someone getting people personally paid and personally promoted to ETL, you don't have to be disrespectful. You can just quietly choose the person to ask that is. Does that make sense, guys? Because at the end of the day, the only person that's going to help you to be the most successful in your life is the same person that has to pay your bills. And last time I checked, that's you. Right? Okay. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, remember, it's all about your identity. Get down to the root. Figure out what's going on there. Figure out what type of person you want to become. And then start to change small habits, not the painful ones, small ones that validate that or give you evidence to that. And you'll be able to reinforce that identity, and over time, add more habits, and you will become the new identity and walk away from the old. Guys, I hope you got some value out of today. Let me go ahead and pass the call back to Mr. Thomas.